This video is going to cover learning target 3. This is on trigonometric ratios. We often abbreviate this and call them trig ratios. The learning target says I can find a trig ratio of a given angle. And this is our last learning target in our foundational learning targets. So after we see this video, you will have seen all the material that covers the foundation of our scale, and we'll be ready to move up into the level 3, starting with learning target 4. Let's remind ourselves, what is a ratio? A ratio is a comparison of two measurements. We have lots of different words for this. So different synonyms for ratio is a fraction is a ratio, scale factors that we use during our similarity topic, or even decimals are technically ratios because all decimals can be written as fractions. Examples of this are 2/5 is a ratio. 2:5 is also a ratio. And 0.6 is also a ratio. Now, all three of these ratios are actually equal to each other. We will be focusing today on 2 divided by 5, or 2/5, as a way of writing our trig ratios. To correctly put together trig ratios, we will have to learn some new vocabulary for the sides of right triangles, as well as some old vocabulary that we need to be reminded of. If we focus our attention on angle A right now, angle A, we still have a hypotenuse for this triangle. That hasn't changed. The hypotenuse is still the longest side of the triangle. But we have some new names for the two remaining sides of the right triangle. There is a side that is across from the angle A. We refer to this side as the opposite side. There is also a side that is directly next to angle A. It is the side that actually comes and is a part of the angle that is A. We refer to this side as the adjacent side. Opposite meaning across, and adjacent meaning next to. If we now change our attention away from angle A and make our angle B, some things change and some things don't. The hypotenuse is still in the same spot. This will not change, so the hypotenuse is still the longest side of a right triangle. But now, the side that is across from angle A is now the AC side, which used to be called the adjacent side, but now it's referred to as the opposite side. And the side that is next to angle B used to be our opposite side, but now we will call it the adjacent side. So it's very important that you pay close attention to the angle that will begin each of our trig ratios, because as we start to call the sides by these new words, opposite and adjacent, you have to know which angle, and that angle will change your answers. We'll switch opposite and adjacent. So let's start learning about the new trig ratios. The first trig ratio is called sine. It is abbreviated as SIN. Lots of students want to pronounce this as sin, but it is not pronounced sin. It is still pronounced sine. It's an abbreviation. They just didn't write the E. So what is sine? Sine of angle A is equal to opposite divided by hypotenuse, or opposite over hypotenuse. The way we find this and the way we write this, if we want to have an answer for the sine of angle A, then we look at angle A. We need to find the opposite and the adjacent. Opposite of angle A is x. I'm going to abbreviate this as OPP. The z is on the longest side. It is the hypotenuse. So my answer for the sine of angle A would be to put the x over the z. And there is my ratio, x over z, x divided by z. You can even do the sine of angle B. The sine of angle B has an opposite side, which is y. the hypotenuse is still the hypotenuse for angle A and angle B. So angle B's sine would be y over z. The second trig ratio is called cosine. It is abbreviated as COS. Students want to call this cos, but we call it cosine. It's an abbreviation. So the cosine of angle B would start here, and instead of being opposite, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. It's the other side over the hypotenuse. I'm going to abbreviate this as ADJ. Z is still the hypotenuse because it is still the longest side. So the cosine of angle B is going to be an x over a z. X is adjacent and z is hypotenuse. You can also do a cosine of angle A. The only difference is the adjacent side to angle A is y. But hypotenuse remains the same. So the cosine of angle A is equal to y over z. The third and last trig ratio is called tangent, abbreviated as TAN. Students like to say tan, but we are going to still pronounce this as tangent, tangent angle A. The tangent is an opposite over adjacent ratio. So let's find our opposite and our adjacent. Opposite for angle A is x, and adjacent for angle A is y. So my tangent of angle A is equal to x over y. Like with all the other trig ratios, we can also make a ratio for angle B. So if I want to find the tangent of angle B, I find the opposite side, which is the y, and the adjacent side, which is x. So my tangent is now a y over an x. Look closely at these two. If you look at angle A, your tangent is an x over y. If you're looking at angle B, your tangent is a y over x. They're flipped. They're not equal to each other. They are different. So you need to be paying close attention to which angle is important for each problem. Now that's a lot of new information, and students do have a hard time remembering all three ratios at first. It's easy to mix up the opposite, the adjacent, and the hypotenuse. So here is a way that students for many, many years have memorized our trig ratios. It's a word. The word is pronounced SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA is a word that we can spell, and it is the information needed to put together each of these. What does it stand for? Well, it stands for sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine, which is the C, is adjacent over hypotenuse. And T stands for tangent, is opposite over adjacent. SOHCAHTOA helps us put together our trig ratios. Some students have another way of remembering SOHCAHTOA. The way that they remember it is by remembering a phrase. Some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid. Some old hippie caught another hippie tripping on acid. This helps you remember the letters that make up the trig ratios. Okay, now I would like you to pause the video and try to write down these answers to the sine, cosine, and tangent of angle A and angle B. Unpause the video when you have your answers. Here are my answers. If you got anything incorrect, please raise your hand and call me over so I can check with you. One more time, I'd like you to try to do these sine, cosine, and tangent ratios for angle E. Pause the video so that you can try out the problems, then unpause it, check your answers. Okay, my answers were sine E is equal to 4 over 5, cosine E is 3 over 5, and tangent E is 4 over 3. If you did not get these answers, raise your hand and call me over so I can check to see what went wrong. Now, some students start to misunderstand what sine A really means. So what does it really mean? Common mistakes are to think that this is multiplication, that you sometimes multiply a sine to an A, but this is incorrect. We do not do multiplication. In reality, sine is more directions. It's directions to use the opposite over hypotenuse ratio. But what is the A? The A is the angle in the triangle. In this spot, you will often be plugging in an actual number, an actual degree. And that is what angles are measured in. So another way we could do this besides calling it sine A is maybe in a triangle there's a degree such as 30. So maybe we're doing sine 30 degrees. So let's try that. Let's try actually using, instead of a letter for an angle, let's start using degrees for an angle. So let's replace it with the degree from this triangle. A degree from this triangle, such as 30, would be written as sine 30. Now what I want you to do is I want you to grab a calculator and locate the sine button, and I want you to type this into your calculator. If you did, you would end up with 0.5. Now 0.5 can be written as 1/2. So what we're actually saying, since this is a sine of 30 degrees, is we're saying that this is a opposite side of 1 and a hypotenuse of 2. If I label that on my triangle, opposite would be here and hypotenuse would be here. Well, this looks pretty familiar because this is a special right triangle. And a special right triangle, the short side is always 1 and the long side is always 2, the hypotenuse. So you see, sine, cosine, and tangent can also give you the sides of triangles as well, just like the special right triangles did. To get used to this calculator work, I'd like you to try a few of these problems. Type them in, write them down, and then pause the video and then unpause it so that you can check your answers. If things are going wrong and you're not getting the answers I'm getting, then call me over so you can figure out what's going wrong with your calculator. Here are my answers. As a last little recap, I would like you to try these last remaining problems. Write down your answers and then unpause the video so that you can check to see if you're getting the right thing. If not, call me over so I can help you figure out what's going wrong. That wraps up our lesson on trig ratios. And this was Learning Target 3. It ends our foundational skills, level 2 skills. In the following classes, we will move up and start to use everything we learned in Learning Targets 1 through 3 to complete problems in our Learning Target 4 through 6, which will help us get our level 3s.